Okay, what is up, Enclave? Today we're going to be giving you a pretty in-depth walkthrough of the blast furnace. This fight has 3 phases. It's really complex to understand the mechanics. Once you understand them, there's really not a lot going on in the fight. There's just a couple of really important things that you have to focus on, and if you do that, you're fine. So, the first portion of the fight is an ad management phase, where you will split the team up into 10 and 10, much like Spoils of Pandaria, where you have 2 teams working at the same time doing different things. That's kind of how this fight goes, except we're basically in the same room, but we have to be separated because there's just too much going on for one group to handle. So let's start the fight, and we'll go over the mechanics as we go. So there are 5 ads active in the beginning. They are really not important because they get killed immediately. The engineers that you'll see are the most important ad in this phase. When they die, they will drop a box that can be clicked on 3 times. Each player can click it once, and we're actually going to see the DK Jace here. We're looking at his viewpoint. He picked up the bomb. You'll see there's an extra action button down here. He didn't get to the edge in time. It blew up. We'll go over that in a second. Kind of how we messed up and how we fixed it later on in the fight. So the ads keep coming. There's a security guard needs to be tanked. The foreman needs to be tanked and killed. The engineers need to be tanked and killed. And we're learning as we go that, hey, we probably shouldn't be tanking them in the middle. They need to be tanked closer to the side, and the reason why is because there's a blast door on the left that once you click, you've got 10 seconds to reach that blast door and use your extra action button to blow up near that door right there. Now, the engineers die fairly quickly. Once they drop that box, you right click to activate the buff on yourself. We had 3 people doing that, and it was the DK, I believe maybe a priest, and a druid that could blink back there, and they had a set order that they were going in, because when those bombs explode, they have a blast radius around them, and so you don't want to all go in at the same time and blow your bombs and kill each other. You want one person to go in, blow his bomb, 1 second later the next person goes in and blows his bomb, the next person goes in and blows his bomb, because it does about 100,000 damage and about a 5-yard radius. So it needs to be person A, boom, person B, boom, person C, boom, head back to the fight. Now, what you'll notice is that that's only one side of the furnace. There is another side of the furnace that also has a door that needs to be handled, and there's another group over there that's doing the exact same thing. So we have 12 players on one side and 12 players on the other, and there are 2 engineers that spawn. One needs to be picked up by one tank and dragged to the left side. The other needs to be picked up by the other tank and dragged to the right side, so that both groups are handling their furnace door at the same time. You'll also notice a bellow operator here. Now, he's important for 2 reasons. One, every time he pulls on the chain, he's increasing the heat. Now, heat does 2 things. One, it's actually the enrage timer for the final boss. The more heat he has when you enter the final phase, the longer you're going to have to kill him before he goes into an enrage mechanic. That's the good part of it. The bad part of it is, in the first 2 phases, the more heat the furnace has, the more frequently it will blast and do AoE damage. At the beginning of the fight, there's not a lot of heat, so there's not a lot of AoE damage going out, so it's actually okay to let the bellow operators do a few pulls on the chain, but after that, you pretty much need to be focusing down these bellow operators as soon as they come up. They don't have a lot of life, they don't have to be tanked, you just kill them. So what you're noticing is that the engineers continue to spawn. We kill them. The same 3 players on each side are getting the bombs and heading to the back and blowing them on the furnace doors. The rest of the group is just sitting here near the front, making sure that we're in range of our healers, and we're killing the security guards and the engineers as they come out. We're interrupting the security guards, and we're cleaving. It's basically just a cleave fight. So he's blowing up the doors as he goes. There's about 100,000. I believe he AMZ'd that one. If you notice over here to the right, because these bellow operators are working and actually getting heat to the furnace, we're not being killed, the Heart of the Mountain, who's the final boss, is actually gaining heat. And as that heat increases, the rate at which he will spawn the blast, or the AoE damage in this phase, increases. You never want to go past about 50% heat, 50 to 60% heat in the first phase. I think we stayed just under 50. Any higher than that, and You're just allowing the furnace to blow up too often. So that's really all we're doing in this phase, is killing engineers, taking the bombs back to the doors in the proper order, blowing the doors up. You'll see he'll blow the door, I believe, right here. Yeah, okay, one pressure regulator has been destroyed. While that's happening, he is gaining heat at a rapid rate, so both groups need to open their doors at roughly the same time. We're now on this bellow operator because we don't want him to get past maybe 50 or 60%. I think he's maybe at 55%ish on the heat. You notice down here, maybe 60%. That's as high as you want to go in this phase. That's really all you should need for the Enrage, at least on normal mode or heroic mode. He then becomes active and comes out. And what happens is the middle of the room hits on fire. If you were to be standing in the middle of a room and that came up, you're dead, because that fire does an insane amount of damage to you. And it's actually a little bit wider and larger than the area on the ground looks. Just because you can't see a fire patch on a particular plate doesn't mean there's not fire there. Pretty much that entire area is covered in fire. So what ends up happening at this point is there are 4 primal elementalists in a square. One here, one on the other side here, and one here. They are immune to damage. Luckily, an ad will spawn in just a second that will allow us to damage those primal elementalists. What those primal elementalists are doing is they are sucking the heat from this boss right here. That's bad for a number of reasons. 1, the heat is, like I said, the Enrage timer. And 2, there's still some AoE damage going out, and we have to survive with healer mana. So the longer this phase lasts, the less heat we'll have, so we'll have less time in the Enrage, and obviously the longer a fight goes, the worse it is. So we want to get through this as fast as we can. So there are ads that are spawning over here. They need to be brought over to this Primal Elementalist to be cleaved down. There are more ads spawning in a second that we'll talk about. They're called Fire Callers. Basically the whole group just spawns together or sits together, and we AoE heal through this. You don't need cooldowns, you don't even need DPS cooldowns to do this. You just need to mechanically do it properly. The Fire Callers will do an AoE blast, they will do a single target blast. It all needs to be interrupted as much as possible. There's going to be a Slag Elemental that spawns. That's the key to this phase. This Slag Elemental right here fixates on a random player. That player needs to get as close as they can to the Primal Elementalist without standing in fire. It needs to be pretty close, within 2 or 3 yards. Because when that Slag Elementalist dies, when he actually explodes, he's going to remove the immune effect on the Primal Elementalist, and we're going to be able to kill the Primal Elementalist. We have 25 seconds, I think, on heroic mode to kill the Primal Elementalist. And so he doesn't have a lot of life once you actually blow his immunities down. You just have to make sure that that Slag Elemental dies on top of him. So we've gotten 1 of the 4 down, and we're just going to move in a group to the next Primal Elementalist, and we're going to stack and cleave. That's the majority of this fight, folks. That's the key. Stack and cleave. Interrupt, stack, cleave. Interrupt, stack, cleave, and AoE heal. Don't stand in the fire. Make sure that the Slag Elementalist is tanked on top of the Primal Elementalist if you are the one who is fixated. Unfortunately, this player did not get close enough, and it blew up just slightly out of the range, so that hurt us, because that means that the Primal Elementalists are now sucking more heat from the boss, which you can see right here, which is really the Enrage timer. That's the Enrage timer, you just don't know it. But now the next Slag Elementalist comes out, and we are going to blow him down. Meanwhile, more and more AoE is coming out, but it's not unhealable. It's only unhealable if you make a mistake and stand in fire. Plenty of time to heal the group back up. Not a lot of damage going out, as you can see. Just the tank's taking a little bit of damage. The rest of the raid is fine. We're going to kill this Primal Elementalist, and we're going to move on to the next one. As you can see, the only damage really going out is the blast, and that's healable with just healing rains and the effervescence on the ground. Now we get to the next Primal Elementalist. We already have an extra Slag Elementalist that's already about to die. They pop that perfectly, and we're just going to now switch the Primal Elementalist and bring them down. We'll worry about the rest of the ads after we get this Primal Elementalist down, but we've got to get those 4 things down first, so that the Enrage for the boss is a little bit longer. We didn't know this until after the fact, and actually as I'm watching the video, it's kind of all clicking in my head how the Enrage works and why people were having such a hard time with this fight. The longer that phase 1 went, the more heat he would have had in this phase, which is really the Enrage timer. And we got to about 60%, which is all you need. If you were having a harder time in the last phase, you can maybe try to push phase 1 longer to build up more heat. But honestly, if we would have just done a better job in this phase and killed the Elementalists faster, he would have maybe had another 10 or 20% heat. And so now what you're going to see is this heat here is going to tick down. There's a couple more mechanics that are going on now that we've actually killed all the ads and the boss is active. He's going to continue to AoE burst. That's the majority of the damage is going out. Ads are still going to spawn, not nearly at the rate that they were, but they still need to be dragged on top of the boss and hit. Now the other mechanic that's happening is that he just sent it out. He sent a flame ball into the air, and it basically targets a ranged player. It's a lot like Team Banff, where all the range stack in a spot to bait that thing out, and it just went out again. And what it does is it basically sends a AoE puddle on the ground that will basically 1 or 2 shot you if you stand in it. Now you can see it there. It's about the size of his hitbox. It's pretty big. It's a brown circle on the ground. Hopefully we'll get to see it a little bit better, but basically what's happening is more ads are coming out. They're really of no consequence at this point other than that they need to be tanked and picked up properly, which a few of them weren't, but that's okay. And then just interrupted and cleave down while we kite the boss. And you see that circle just went out. It's pretty big. The Ranger now in a safe spot. It's going to land there, and they'll have to move again. We need to be moving the boss now. But as you can see, his heat is getting lower and lower and lower, and when it runs out, he's going to enrage. If we would have done a better job in phase 2, we'd have another 10 or 20% heat left, so we would be able to handle this phase a lot smoother and cleaner than we did. But as you can see, he's basically out of heat right now, and he is getting ready to enrage. And when he does, things get crazy. He just berserked right now, much higher than he should have. At this point, he's going to start AoE blasting quickly, like Thok heroic mode. We're devoing at the exact right time. We're AMZing at the exact right time now. Smoke bomb, Trank just went out. I mean, everything you can possibly do at this point to survive. Those cooldowns need to be in order. They need to not be stacked, and they need to constantly be going, because from this point on, it's only getting worse. As you can see, we're slowly losing people to attrition. Ads are still coming out. We're still having to heal through this, and it's not getting any easier. We're getting lower and lower and lower, and we're not being able to get healed up because this is the way that WoD works. If you can't heal people up to full, you're not going to get a chance to. People are slowly going to get whittled down, and he's just exploding faster and faster and faster. So at this point, we have the boss pretty low. He's berserked way sooner than he should. We're out of cooldowns, and we've just got to burn and use personals. We are able to get the kill. I think, just because we have a lot of people that are pretty solid at using mechanics like Feint, Cloak, Hellstone, Ice Block to stay alive to the very end, we do manage to get the kill. But that's basically the fight. It's basically how you handle the heat in phase 1, how high you let it get, is going to determine how much time you have in phase 3 before the boss actually enrages. And other than that, it's pretty much just a cleave fight where you're burning the boss, burning the ads, tanking them in the right spot, and interrupting the right things. As long as you can get phase 1 down, the rest is pretty much just stack, interrupt, and burn. Phase 1 with the 2 groups and having to send 3 different people at the exact right time and the exact right order to blow the furnaces properly is probably the hardest part. And if you can do that, you're probably going to earn yourself a kill pretty quickly. I'll see you on live. This is Infinity from Enclave, and hey, that's another boss down.